to was like professional, really any soccer game, because soccer wasn't even a thing, like, where I grew up when I was a kid. So they gave me tickets to the July 3rd game. They had like a fireworks night, so I could see
Yeah.
the stage area and where I was going to be and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wow, this is my first professional soccer game. It was the Major League Soccer. It was the men's league. So it was the Chicago Fire.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, they did a theme night. And it was country music night. And I was literally like, we were the country band. So we had like a full 2-hour set, and then they had us play again at halftime. So it was pretty wild.
Nice. That's really cool. That's really cool. So we're going to just kind of roll into this one. We got Vander joining us on the podcast tonight. How's everything been going?
Good, good. It's good to be back. How have you been? Good too?
Yeah, everything's been good. I'm actually getting ready to come up that way. I'll be up there Wednesday.
Oh,
So,
shoot. Too bad you weren't here last Saturday.
right, my grandma turns 90 on Saturday. So that's kind
Oh,
of like my dad told me about 3 months ago. He was like, "Hey, I don't know what we're doing, but July 20th, make sure you're in Chicago." And I'm like, "Okay." And then about a
oh.
week ago, I'm like, "Hey, we are actually doing something, right? It's not just, hey, be in Chicago July 20th." He's like,
Yeah.
That's a great question. I really don't know what we're doing." And I'm like, "Sweet." Like, I go up there and there's nothing going on. That'd be amazing.
Oh, well, it'd be relaxing.
But yeah, well, and that's kind of what I'm hoping it is. It's like,
Yeah.
if I could sleep and not have to worry about getting up to do something, I'm all about it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that.
but excited to have you back on. How's you've been really busy. We talked a little bit about your gig this past weekend in Soldier Field, which is not a lot of people can say they played Soldier Field, which is really cool.
It's
So,
still like, it's like when I was like, hang on, let me pinch myself. And yeah, that really happened.
right?
It was
And
pretty wild.
it was for the Major League Soccer, the Chicago Fire, which
Yep.
they were like they were around when I was in Chicago, but it wasn't something that was like super popular back when I was
Mhm.
up there. So it was
Yeah.
like they were there, but um, so that's really cool that you got to perform a pre-show and then halftime, right?
Yeah, so I started doing theme nights, I guess. Basically when, I was asked to do the gig, at first I was like, you want me? Like, really? Okay. Like, and then I had that moment where I was like, I want to throw up a little bit. At the
Okay.
same time, I'm like, you know what? I do this all the time. Like we can do this, right?
Mhm.
And I, like, so at least, and it came really quick, so um I don't know, I've got an amazing band that I work with out here, so without them I can't do what I do too.
Mm.
So knowing I have them to fall back on is just great. And because I'm somebody, I really like to get involved with the crowd. So I had giveaways and stuff that the fire gave me to give out to the crowd, and it was we were kind of laughing because I'm like, it's probably the only place in a building that big I could scream fire and not get in trouble, especially
Yeah.
over a big PA. So I was trying to like get the crowd amped up, and I was like, are we here for a Chicago Fire win? And everyone goes, yeah. And when you realize you have thousands of people yelling back at you, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this is
Oh,
pretty cool.
nice,
Yeah,
nice.
so I was like,
It's
give me fire. I go, fire, and everybody goes, fire back. Yeah, it's a great memory. It really is.
nice. So it was a pretty packed house, I take it then?
Um, I never made it into the stadium part itself, like to see the game, but I know the whole area where I don't even know how many people were there. So that whole area was pretty darn full. So it was,
Yeah.
yeah, pretty fun.
Yeah.
Um, and to be
Well,
able to play original, like I did covers obviously, and
mhm,
then to be able to do original music was, oh, and
right.
Soldier.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, Soldier Field is huge. So there could be 10, 15,000 people there, and wouldn't even put a dent into what Soldier Field can hold. So it,
Yeah,
it's one of those things where it's like that place is just so big, but it is
it
what
was
it is.
one of the coolest things was going there beforehand and getting set up. You get in before anybody's in the stadium. It's just some staff members, and I'm like, I have Old Soldier Field all to myself. Besides, a few people um I don't know. I feel like I'm still processing it all.
Nice.
Hopefully it's just the start of some stuff, you never know if that's it. That's, I don't want to say that's great. It's just like you get a little taste, but like you said, not a lot of people can say they've done that. And it
Yeah.
was to know we were the only country act there all night and got a full 2 hour set with my own original music was like, whew.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. And then you also did you played the 615 live, right? In
Yeah,
June. Nice.
yeah, yeah.
How'd that show go for you?
That was fun. That was fun. That's a fun room. It's nice because for me, that was an acoustic show. And there's a guitarist I know out there. We had chatted a few times on just like over Instagram Messenger and stuff.
Mhm.
My producer kept saying, when you're down here, you should have him play for you. And I'm like, it just never lined up. And then finally it did. And then Nicole, my
Mhm.
publicist, realized, she's like, oh my gosh, you're having Randy Barnett play for you. I'm like, yeah. She's like, I love him. I was like, you two know of course you know each other.
Right, right.
Yeah,
It's one of those things where it's like Nashville, although it's growing, everybody seems to kind of know everybody through some
yeah.
way, shape, or form. I was supposed to be there, and I was in Nashville, to be fair. I came down. The original plan was I was going to do, because Nicole she had invited me to 615 Live last year, but I couldn't make it.
Oh,
And so she invited me this year, and I was like, okay, cool. So I started planning a little trip thing. I was like, okay, I'll go do this, I'll go do that. I was going to do like a live podcast thing the night before, and then Thursday go do 615 live, and then if I hung out Friday, cool. If not, I was just going to head back here to Texas. And then about 3 weeks beforehand, somebody reached out to me, asked me if I wanted to go to CMA Fest, or if I had thought about going to CMA Fest, and I was like, no, I mean, I know it's that weekend, but I hadn't really thought about it. And they're like, well, here's an email address. Go ahead and reach out, see if you can get media passes. And I'm like, surely that's not going to happen. And
but
then
I
it
saw
did.
you got them, didn't you?
Yep, yep, I did. And so then it was like, oh, I've got 3 weeks. I got to figure out this entire thing. Like, because everybody had already been booked for like at least a month at that point. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, let's see who can I get. So it was cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But
So, did you get
yeah,
to watch any shows at least, or was it all interviews for you?
it was all interviews because, like, for the most part, I was there at like 9 in the morning every day, and then I was out by 5:30. And at that point, it's like, do I really want to go hawking downtown to go find a show that I'd
Yeah.
probably ultimately, because my media passes only were good for certain things.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
was just like, man, I don't really want to go try and figure out what it's good for. I know what it already can get me into to this
Yeah.
point, and so it is what it is.
Yeah. Super
But
cool though. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, it was definitely fun. So how's everything been going for you? Obviously, been super busy. You got new music that dropped in May. You dropped two singles in May. I think I was reading that
Yeah.
correctly.
Yeah.
How's that all been going?
It's good. I dropped Rockin' My Shoe in May. And then I dropped one. It was kind of a novelty song, if you will, but I feel like it'll come back around every year. Like Christmas songs come around every year.
Yeah,
The Daddy Tree, I wrote it with my father in mind, and I dropped that at the very, very end of May because I wanted it to be ready, like for all of like Father's Day season, if
yeah,
you will. Um, so I surprised him with that at 615 Live last year. He had no idea I was going to do it. And then I knew he was going to come down because he still lives in the Chicago suburbs.
yeah,
So he was going to go, and I had this all planned out, because I had just gone in the studio to cut it. And so I was sitting on that one for like a good year. And I don't know. And then just to surprise him with it at the show, I was like, I'm like, so I wrote this song, and I said, basically, there's one person in here who's been a fan longer than anybody, blah blah blah, and he's like oblivious, and I'm like, Dad, get up here. So yeah, so he got to hear the studio version of it before it was actually released, and then when it was finally released, it was just, I don't know. I tried to write it universally, so you know, it fits for anybody, any daddy daughter situation. But a lot of the stories are definitely inspired by things that, you know, happen. There's one minus the gun though. What was it? Um, you grab a gun without a care, but you have to chase them down the street in your underwear. So there was, I'm like, I was trying to think of my own line for a second. I was like, hang on, because the music isn't going. It takes me a second.
Right.
But he did come banging down my door at like 2 a.m. because this boy came at around that time, and he was like tapping on my window, and I was dead asleep, and my dad heard it, and he goes, "Where's his mom's phone number?" And he's like, he was livid, and he just went hauling down the street. And then he realized, why am I trying to chase this young kid down the street? Like, he's thinking, you know, I can't do this. Well, they weren't that bright at the time, and they just left their car running with the door open in front of my dad's house, and they ran. They should have just run to their car and driven away. Yeah. So my dad got in their back seat and just sat there and waited. And he, like, I guess had his, and he tells that story to this day. He's like, so that's where that line came from. That's not violent, but yeah, but so when I actually sang it to him, and like as each line hit, he was like, "What?" So it was fun.
Nice. But that's really cool.
Yeah.
Now, is it all building toward to a bigger project, or where you kind of see things going for you for the rest of the year?
So I have another one that I wanted to release in July, but that it's not happening in July. I have another really fun one. I feel like it's definitely a summer song, but I don't know. I keep pushing back the date because there's other things going on. I definitely have brand new Christmas music again this year. I'm trying to do that every year. Nice. And I'm definitely keeping the songs going. But I feel like the way the industry works, it seems like they want, for marketing reasons, it seems it's better to do single. I feel like if I just drop a whole album, you lose a lot of momentum.
Yeah, fair. I've noticed that is very accurate. You know, if you drop a whole, especially if it's like a full, like 12 songs or whatever it is.
Yeah.
What I've seen a lot of musicians doing recently that have kind of really worked is what they're doing is they'll release, say, a 4-song EP. So it'll be like one song, and then 3-4 weeks later, it's a second song. And then they kind of do that release pattern. And then they hold for 2 months, and then they do another EP. And then they release their full project with 4 new songs. So you're not recycling, but you're reusing the original 2 EPs. And then you're enticing people to kind of get in on it because they got 4 new songs they've never heard before. So I've kind of seen that really start working, which is kind of cool.
Well, I mean, because people are like, "Do you have a whole album?" I'm like, well, by the time you add it all up, it is. It's just that I've just been releasing one at a time, you know. So it's, you know, as an indie artist, you know, budgets are definitely a little tighter, and, you know, trying to get creative and promote yourself and stuff like that. And I think that's why too. And circling back to the very beginning of the conversation, as an indie artist, I got to play Soldier Field. Like, I'm still like, that was wild. But just being able to, it's really a blessing to be able to have the ability to get in the studio and work with these people. And so I'm just trying to be smart with the budget that I do have. And make sure I'm picking the right team members, and obviously have to be strategic about how it's released. So I don't really see a full album being dropped at one time, but it doesn't mean the material won't be there.
Yeah, for sure.
That make sense? Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's just kind of like the album is definitely like a benchmark for a lot of people in the industry. It's like, oh, they put out an album, cool, you know, like they're for real. But this day and age, it's like everything's like really singles driven, but the industry's always been singles driven. It's just back 15 years ago, if you did 3 singles and then an album, the pay scale was like there for it. Nowadays, like, the pay scale just isn't there to do the traditional 3 songs and then a full album, unless you've got 20 million followers and like everybody's going to go out and buy it, you know?
as you said that too, something just like, it was like a bell went off in my head. And it's not that you said anything, you didn't say anything wrong, but when you say the traditional, it's like, is there any traditional anything really? Because the
Yeah.
industry is changing so much and
Yeah.
so quick.
Yeah.
It's like, what is the new norm going to be in the next, 5 years? Like,
Yeah.
it's
On
like,
it. Honestly, I think the industry is just kind of recycling. Like, because I mean, I've said this a couple of times on the podcast, even back in like the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the industry was still very singles driven because, you had like your 45s and stuff like that that were
uh-huh.
A side, B side singles. Um, and I really don't think anything's changed. It's just the medium's changed. So it's like, yeah, yes, vinyl is starting to come back around. We could have a whole like 3 hour conversation about the importance of vinyl and all that stuff. But right now, with how much music's out there, how easily accessible it all is, because you can pay, I don't know what's Spotify anymore, $15, $10 a month, whatever it is, and you can get any song you ever
Yeah.
wanted.
Oh yeah.
So,
And that
it's
the cost of a CD or cassette or whatever it was. It was maybe, I'm trying to remember, like you could buy a whole thing for like, I'm gonna date myself, but it was maybe a little cheaper than $15. It was
I
like
think
10,
it was $11. I think I remember paying like 10, 11, $12.
10.99 or something. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that was the other thing. I remember going to like Target on like a Tuesday, like in that, because that's when like all the new releases came out, and it was like 10, 11, $12,
Yeah.
and that's what it was. So,
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, I guess the price, like a download, I guess is it like the wheels are literally turning as we're discussing that. It's like,
right.
yeah, we'll break it down. Okay, $1.19 or whatever it is a
Mm.
song, depending on what platform, or 99 cents. I
Yeah,
guess it breaks down to about that.
yeah,
But but yeah, you would also, well, I mean, that's if you download it, but
yeah,
not a lot of people actually
yeah,
download a song because you could stream it for a
yeah,
subscription and have
right.
millions of songs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Because that used to be when I was in high school and like iTunes was like starting to become a thing,
Yeah.
where you go and download a thing. My economics teacher, he turned it into an economics project. Like, would you rather pay $11 for a CD where you're going to listen to half the songs,
Yeah.
because like there's very few CDs or albums or full projects where you go through and listen to every song out there. Um, or would you rather pay 15, 16, $17 and listen to every song on the album?
Well, and I think that leads to like another point too. As an artist now, when you're putting music out, I feel like every single song, like you can't just like have a filler song to go on an album. Every single song needs to be a like solid single.
Yeah,
Like that, yeah, it needs to be it really good in its own right. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like it's also kind of up the game for artists.
Oh yeah.
So
Well, and with the ability for a lot of artists to like really go into the studio with a good idea of what they want by having the ability to do like really good rough productions of their own songs,
yeah.
it gives them the ability to go in and like, okay, this is really what I'm thinking, and
Mhm.
have like a good idea down on track instead of going in and saying, hey, I want to write a song that's like bubblegum poppy about shotguns, or like whatever it is,
Yeah.
and just like the most vaguest of instructions. So,
Yep. Yeah.
but that's just kind of the evolution of the industry, I guess, right?
It's interesting. It definitely is keeping us all on our toes.
Right, right, right.
For sure.
So,
For
uh
sure.
so where are you kind of at show wise right now? Obviously you just finished up Soldier Field. Are you looking at how often are you playing like through the rest of the summer?
I'm taking a little break right now. I've got an acoustic show coming up in Naperville on Saturday. And then I'm gonna be heading back to Nashville probably in memory serves me right. It's the end of July, which is coming up, like
Mhm.
first week of we're already halfway through July. Because I'm supposed to go finish the vocals for my Christmas song.
Nice.
And I'm gonna get with my band and get a like just nice video together and stuff like that. And I want to plan stuff out with them and their schedules because the band that I guess my home base of a band here in Chicago, it's newly formed. So I
Mhm.
want to make sure, like, I want the right players on the full band gigs
Yeah.
because it
There's
makes all the difference.
Oh
So
yeah, it really does. You want people you can trust and
yeah.
are like if you're not paying attention to something, they're gonna catch it and they've got the best interest in the performance at heart. And it's just not a
Oh,
paid.
yeah. And it's like, and I feel really, really blessed to have, like, honestly, when some of the guys, when they came to play, like, the guy, he's my band lead. His name is Brian. My husband's name is Brian. So many people we know are named Brian. Brian
Right.
is a very prominent name in my life.
I feel
And
like Brian's a common name in the Chicagoland area, period. I grew up with a lot of Brian's. So
yeah, well, our wedding party, there was my husband Brian. There was his best friend Brian was our best man.
mhm.
Our now goddaughter's her dad was in the bridal party. That's Brian. One of the ring bear or not ring bearers. Was he a ring bearer? My husband's right here. Was he a? I think. Yeah. Ring bearer. He was Brian, and
Mhm.
like just there were. I don't know. It's like we had a VHS of our. So I'm dating myself of our wedding, and they literally put like credits at the end, and you
Yeah.
just see Brian, 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 and now the neighborhood that we live in, there's a Brian across the street. One of our friends, like, we have this group of people we go to dinner with on Friday nights, and there's like 4 Brians. I'm like, really? Like, someone
Right.
moves in the neighborhood. I'm like, come on. I'm like,
It's like I
anyway,
bet their name is Brian, you know.
yeah. So anyway, I digress. The point is like, so I was when I was looking for my lead guitarist, of course, the guy that ends up landing the gig is his
Yep.
name is Brian. But he's great, and he was very humble at first, and he was like, and I mean, and he still is, but he can tear up a drum set, he can shred a guitar like crazy, he can play bass. My keyboardist can also really tear up a guitar. Like there's quite a few multi instrumentalists in there.
Yep.
So if one is gone, somebody else can just hop on and move
Yep.
over. So it's yeah, I'm kind of a lucky girl that way.
Nice.
So yeah.
That's that's really cool. I'm glad that you kind of and I wish when I was living in Chicago I knew more about the music scene there because
Mhm.
when I lived in the because I grew up in the south suburbs, so like Lansing, Illinois, like
Yeah.
Dyer, that area is where I grew up, and I only knew like one or two people that were like actively in bands, but it
Yeah.
wasn't like something they pursued professionally. It was just like, oh, we're a bunch of punk kids and we're going to screw around with instrument, that type of situation. And now, since I'm not there, I've met so many people from the greater Chicagoland area that are in bands, been there their entire lives. And it's like, dang, I wish I'd have.
Well, yeah, I do still feel like, I mean, now that there's this network of people that I'm meeting,
Mhm.
and I feel still very new to in Chicago. I mean, definitely in Nashville. I know more people in
Yeah.
Nashville, I feel like, just because for me, everything, when I restarted in music and writing my own stuff, it all started, even if I was here,
Yeah.
it was during COVID. So everything was locked down anyway. Um, so yeah, but up here networking with people, it was kind of more like what you
Yeah.
described. And then when people realize, like, oh, she's actually a music, like, I've had songs on the radio
Yeah.
and blah blah blah, then, like, some of the, I don't know, the higher tier musicians
Yeah.
then were wanting to come, which was, I feel very, very lucky to
Yeah.
have them. They're all and they're great people too, which is good. But what I love about up here, I was not always a country music fan, and I don't hate admitting that, but I also feel like that shows in some of my music. I mean, my
Mhm.
heart is definitely in country, but there's such a melting pot up here, between which you would know, and it's, just
Yeah.
with blues and R&B and all this stuff. And so I straight up asked the drummer that I had last weekend, I'm like, why do you want to work with me? And he's like, and they're like specifically looking to get into pop country,
Yeah.
they're really digging it. And and the same with, a couple other people. And it's just, I feel like, I don't know, there's definitely a hunger for it out here.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah. It's definitely like looking back on it, like growing up in the 90s and early 2000s in Chicago, country wasn't really that big part of my life as
yeah,
far as, like it wasn't something I listened to. Like every once in a while, like a country song would break through and it would just kind of be, oh, hey, I
yeah.
listen to country, but it's like it was like Lone Stars, just like a
Lone
what,
Star, Garth Brooks, Shania
yeah,
Twain. Yeah.
yeah, that type of stuff. And so it would always kind of break through, which was interesting. And then once I started to like really look into it, like 7, 8 years ago, when I started doing live and amplified, I was like, dang, there was a whole thing that I missed out on during that
Yeah.
time. So
Well, I also feel like once a country artist gets their hooks in a non-country person, it is like a rabbit hole. It's just like, okay, you know why I like this one? Well, it's not that country.
yeah,
And then you get to like that. At least that's how it was for me. And then you get to like that artist, and then it's
yep,
just like, oh, wait a minute, I like this one. And
yep,
who knows? Maybe it's a streaming thing nowadays too, because there's the algorithms. That's like, if you like this, you might like, and so it's not like the cassette days where that's all you have to listen
yeah.
to. So I like my husband. I know he can hear me, but I think he can if he's still in the other room. I It was only a couple years ago that he really started listening to country,
Yeah,
and I remember coming home from work and I was just like, oh, you're listening to country, and he's like, no, I wasn't listening to that. And then I would hear him like in another room and he's like singing away and jamming to some of it. I'm like, you like that.
yeah.
And now
That's
he's like, yeah, he's doing some of his own stuff with music now too, which is it's pretty cool for him. So it's like, I'm like, yeah, that he got the bug too.
right.
So
It that has been the cool thing, especially since I started getting involved with like CMA Fest, CRS, and all that stuff. It's
yeah,
like I've been going down the rabbit hole, and like I knew who a lot of the OGs were.
yeah.
Like I knew a lot of the guys from like the 80s, 90s, all that stuff. And now I'm starting to like really get into the people that are like really popping off on country radio right now and the people that are coming up that are going to be like major headliners in the next 3 or 4 years. And it's just like, this is crazy. Like, and I don't know how I'm going to fit all this information in the back of my head. It's like, all right, all this country, I've got to remember this. All this rock, I got to remember this. And then that's just like half of the stuff we do. And it's like, I'm going to need somebody to take something over here soon because it's not going to be fun. So,
Oh, that's a good problem to have, though. I mean, if you're that busy and getting to meet all those people and
yeah. Oh,
get
yeah.
all that, oh, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. It's exciting. It's just it's a lot because it's like I'll go through phases where it's like a lot of country musicians and
Uh-huh.
then people will be like, "Oh, you only do country music." It's like, "No, that's just kind of the phase that's kind of the phase that we're in right now." And then I'll
Okay.
go and I'll just do a bunch of rock music and they're like, "Oh, you only do rock music." And it's like, "No, go check the catalog. That's not the facts, but okay, I
So,
get it."
rocking my shoe, the one that I had, like
Mhm.
that could go either one.
Right.
So,
It's definitely a really cool song, and we'll kind of jump back in on that one. I was listening to it on the way home, and it just kind of came on by chance because I'll throw my Spotify playlist on and just kind of let it ride.
uh-huh.
And it came on, and I wasn't really paying attention because I don't like to um, watch the radio when I'm driving because I got more important things to be doing than paying attention to what's on the
Yeah,
radio. And
yeah.
I was sitting there, I was listening to it, and I was like, wait a minute. I know who this is. I don't know why. I was just like, okay, and yeah, so that was just kind of a funny moment as I was driving home.
Oh,
So,
that's fun. That's fun. That
um,
is honestly, I almost did not perform that song at Soldier Field on Sunday or
really,
Saturday. And I was like, I don't know if I should do it. It is country night. It's kind of a little too rocky. And then my whole band looked at me like, are you crazy? Like, they're like, country is rock right now. Like, you better do that song. And I don't know, it's just such a fun song to perform to. And honestly, one of the most surreal things was going there, like watching the crowd actually, like the reaction to that song. Like the keyboard player texted me today. He's like, "Rockin' My Shoe hit really hard." And like people were just so into it. And
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone got video of it, which is just killing me. So like I'm dying to see if somebody did.
I
But it
thought I
was
saw something on your Instagram, or was that not rocking my shoe?
no, that one, that was a cover that was on Instagram.
Okay. Okay.
I'm still collecting all the video and stuff that people have. So I only
Yeah.
had like a little snippet. So I'm going to be posting some of the, all, like things that I have through the week. So,
Nice.
but yeah, Rockin' My Shoe was, when you see like a crowd of people like that and they're just, cause it's a song that's so empowering. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's just rocking. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I don't know. It's like, anyway, I can you tell I'm still floating. Like,
Hey, it's all good. I love it.
oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. It's not the worst case scenario I've had of a dog interrupting the podcast, so we're good. It's I had a dog once that was sitting right behind the camera and just panting into the microphone, and I didn't pick it up until afterwards. I went because like the way this records is I get each mic in separately. And so when I went in, I was just sitting there, I was listening to the guest audio track and just kind of like listening to it. And I'm like, what the heck is that noise in the background? And then I go and I just kind of continue listening. And then it's like, oh, it's their dog just sitting behind the camera, just panting right into the microphone. And I'm like, I don't know if I can get that one out. Like that's
Yeah.
just kind of going to be there. That's going to be the episode. So, it is what it is. But
Yeah.
um
Well, that was Wednesday. That's her name. She's our rescue dog. I've got 3, and she is definitely my little girl. So she's
nice.
probably like, "Who are you talking to?"
Nice. Adam's Family reference, I'm guessing.
She came with the name.
Okay.
Yeah, we got her off of there was a transport truck. We're on a waiting list for another dog. I've rescued so many animals through my husband and I both have through our marriage. And anyway, we had this dog, a different rescue dog, and we lost him when he was about 6 years old to lymphoma. And so we had another dog in the house. So it was just 2 dogs and me and my husband. And the other dog was so depressed. She would just eat, lay on the couch, and she wouldn't play. And so we were on a list for a German short hair pointer. And, so I'm like, okay, while we're waiting for the other dog to be born, and it was like the guilt of getting a purebred dog. I'm like, we should probably foster a dog in between. And her picture came up and it looked just like the dog on the picture that we had lost. And she came off the transport truck because if they could secure a foster, she would not be euthanized. So we took her, and anyway, it's a foster fail. She never left. And but she ran straight to me. She literally like wrapped her little paws around me. She didn't want anybody else. It's like she knew she was coming to me. So nice. she couldn't leave.
That's awesome. I love that story. I wish I could have I could have a dog in my apartment, but they've got breed restrictions, weight restrictions, and then it adds on like a whole bunch of extra money into my rent. And it's like, for the 3 hours that I'm going to be home at night, it's like, it's not really fair to them or me.
No,
So
it's not. Yeah. You have to have time for them for sure. It's a huge commitment. And
and it's like, unless they're like super comfortable traveling a lot, it's like, it's not really going to be something that works out at this point, especially in my apartment. My apartment's really small. I might as well live in downtown Chicago, to be honest with you. But
well, at least the weather's nicer in Texas.
Like it's gonna be like next week. It'll be very reminiscent of Chicago. It'll be like not cool, but it'll be like in the 90s and just kind of very not Texas like. So
okay.
I'm excited about that. It's like sweet, not having to worry about wildfires right now is like a breath of fresh air. And I mean that literally.
Well, we had all that. We didn't have the fires out here, but if you remember I don't know if you saw the news, we had all the smoke and everything from the fires up in It was the weirdest. I don't think I've ever seen that out. I saw it when Brian and I traveled out to Vegas some years
Mhm.
ago, and I just remember being able to see the smoke like out in the distance and stuff, and you could literally smell it. It smelled like a bonfire.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I just remember the first time I saw it, and it lasted for weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so weird. Yeah,
I
so yeah, I
I
bet
dat
that will be a breath of fresh air to not have to worry about that. That would be terrifying.
right. Yeah. I had to ask my sister about that stuff up there because she lives in Northwest Indiana,
Oh,
or
yeah,
is it Western India? I don't know the geographical location of where she lives in like Roselawn, like that area. So
Indiana. I don't know where that is.
yeah,
I know.
it's like somewhere between Northwest and West Indiana, somewhere in that ballpark. So
Okay.
um
Okay.
so yeah, but anyways, I had to ask her like, hey, are you guys getting all this stuff from Canada? And she's like, yeah, it's kind of bad. So it's
Yeah, it was for a bit. Like it literally would hurt to breathe. It was like it was just weird. So
yeah,
we're not used to that up here. It's not a normal thing.
fair, very fair.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's not fun regardless.
No,
So
no.
but I don't want to take up too much more of your time here. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to check out your music, any of that fun stuff, where's the best place to find you?
My music is everywhere. Just Annie Vander on Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, all the things, YouTube. If you go to YouTube for music, I'm on Instagram at Annie_Vander and Facebook Annie Vander.